It all began on a rainy Thursday evening. The sound of droplets tapping against the window was oddly soothing as I settled into my favorite armchair with a book in hand. Rebecca, my wife, was in the kitchen, her voice carrying faintly as she spoke on the phone. At first, I didn't pay much attention. Rebecca worked in public relations, so late-night calls were nothing unusual. But something in her tone gave me pause, an edge of secrecy that made me strain to listen. I couldn't hear much at first, just the muffled hum of her voice against the rain. But then her words became clearer. "I just don't know how much longer I can keep doing this," she said, her voice low but tense. I frowned, leaning slightly toward the open doorway. "No, he doesn't suspect anything," she continued, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "He's too distracted with work to notice." My heart sank. Was she talking about me? I set the book down, my mind racing. "Look, I have to go," Rebecca said quickly. "I'll call you later when it's safe." The call ended with a beep, and I barely had time to compose myself before she walked into the living room. "Hey," she said with a warm smile, drying her hands with a towel. "What are you reading?" I held up the book, forcing a casual tone. "Just something I picked up last week." Rebecca nodded, her demeanor relaxed. But my heart was pounding, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. That night, as Rebecca slept peacefully beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The words I'd overheard replayed in my mind. No, he doesn't suspect anything. What didn't I suspect? The next day, I couldn't focus at work. My mind kept drifting back to Rebecca's conversation. Was it innocent? A venting session with a friend? Or was it something more? I decided to trust my instincts, or, rather, my suspicions. After dinner, when Rebecca stepped out to take a call, I grabbed her phone from the kitchen counter. My hands trembled as I unlocked it using the passcode I knew by heart. There was nothing unusual in her messages or recent calls. But then I saw a number saved under the name Samantha. I frowned. Rebecca's best friend was named Samantha, but the tone of her conversation the night before didn't sound like the way she usually spoke to her. I opened the chat, my stomach twisting as I scrolled through the messages. "Rebecca, I can't wait to see you again. Thursday, same place? Samantha, of course. I've missed you." My blood ran cold. Rebecca hadn't mentioned meeting Samantha recently, let alone making plans. I put the phone back just as Rebecca walked into the room. "What are you up to?" she asked with a smile. "Just checking my emails," I lied, holding up my own phone. She nodded, leaning down to kiss me on the forehead before settling on the couch. I forced myself to act normal, but inside, I was unraveling. The following Thursday, I left work early and drove to the cafe where Rebecca had supposedly planned to meet Samantha. It was a small, tucked-away spot downtown that she occasionally visited for work meetings. I parked across the street, my heart pounding as I watched the entrance. At 5:15 p.m., Rebecca arrived. She looked beautiful, her hair tied back and a smile on her face as she stepped inside. 5 minutes later, a man joined her. He was tall, well-dressed, and greeted her with an ease that suggested familiarity. Rebecca's smile widened as they sat at a corner table. My chest tightened. This wasn't Samantha. I couldn't take my eyes off them. Rebecca leaned forward, her smile bright as she spoke to the man across from her. He seemed attentive, nodding and laughing at something she said. From my position in the car, I couldn't hear their conversation, but their body language spoke volumes. The way she touched her hair, the way he leaned in, it felt too intimate to be professional. I snapped a few photos with my phone, my hand trembling. It felt wrong to spy on her like this, but the pit in my stomach demanded answers. After what felt like an eternity, the man reached into his pocket and placed something on the table. Rebecca's expression shifted, serious now, almost anxious, as she picked it up. I strained to see what it was but couldn't make it out. They talked for another 20 minutes before standing to leave. Rebecca hugged him briefly, then walked out of the cafe, her face calm and collected. The man stayed behind, pulling out his phone and typing something before heading in the opposite direction. I followed Rebecca home, keeping a safe distance. My mind raced as I replayed the scene in the cafe. Who was that man? What was the thing he'd handed her? When I got home, Rebecca was in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared dinner. "How was your day?" she asked, glancing over her shoulder with a smile. "Busy," I said, forcing a casual tone. "Yours?" "Not bad," she replied. "Just the usual errands and meetings." I studied her carefully, searching for any sign of guilt or unease, but she seemed completely at ease. That night, after Rebecca went to bed, I slipped into the living room and retrieved her purse. My hands trembled as I sifted through the contents, searching for whatever the man had given her. At first, I found nothing unusual: her wallet, keys, some receipts, but then my fingers brushed against a small white envelope tucked into an inner pocket. I pulled it out and opened it carefully. Inside was a single key and a folded piece of paper. The note was short but chilling. "Tomorrow, 8 p.m. 432 Elm Street. Don't be late." My heart pounded as I stared at the key and the address. What was Rebecca getting herself into? The next day, I couldn't focus on anything else. I looked up the address during my lunch break and found that it belonged to an old industrial building in a quiet part of town. When I got home that evening, Rebecca was unusually quiet, distracted even. She picked at her dinner, barely meeting my eyes. "What's on your mind?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She glanced up quickly, forcing a smile. "Nothing. Just tired." I nodded, but the tension in the air was undeniable. At 7:45 p.m., Rebecca grabbed her coat and bag. "I'm meeting Samantha," she said, her voice a little too casual. "She's having a rough week and needs someone to talk to." I nodded, pretending to believe her. "Tell her I said hi." She smiled faintly before heading out the door. As soon as she was gone, I grabbed my keys and followed. When I arrived at 432 Elm Street, Rebecca's car was already parked outside. The building was dimly lit, its windows dark except for a faint glow from the second floor. I parked a short distance away and watched as Rebecca approached the door. She glanced over her shoulder before unlocking it with the key from the envelope. My pulse quickened as I waited a few minutes before slipping out of my car. I made my way to the building, my footsteps silent against the gravel. Inside, the air was cold and musty. I crept up a flight of stairs, careful to avoid making any noise. Rebecca's voice echoed faintly from down the hall, followed by a man's deeper tone. I couldn't make out the words, but the urgency in their voices was clear. I moved closer, my heart hammering in my chest. Peeking around the corner, I saw Rebecca standing with the man from the cafe. He was holding a briefcase, his expression serious as he handed it to her. Rebecca opened it, revealing stacks of cash and a small black device I couldn't identify. "What if he finds out?" Rebecca asked, her voice shaky. "He won't," the man replied. "As long as you stick to the plan." "Plan? What plan?" I stepped back, my mind reeling. Whatever was happening, it wasn't just an affair. It was something much more dangerous. I stood frozen in the shadowed hallway, straining to hear every word Rebecca and the man exchanged. My heart pounded in my chest, and my mind raced with questions. Rebecca's voice trembled. "This is too much. I don't think I can go through with it." "You don't have a choice," the man said firmly. "We've come too far for you to back out now." Rebecca closed the briefcase and pressed her fingers to her temples, pacing the small room. "What if he finds out? What if he's already suspicious?" "He won't," the man replied, his tone calm but cold. You've been careful, right? Rebecca didn't respond immediately, but the hesitation spoke volumes. I leaned back, my thoughts spiraling. Was the he they were talking about me? What were they planning? As I backed away, my foot brushed against a loose piece of debris, and it made a faint scrape against the floor. The sound echoed in the silence, and Rebecca's voice stopped mid-sentence. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice sharp. "Stay here," the man ordered. I ducked into a darkened corner, holding my breath as his footsteps approached. The man stepped into the hallway, scanning the shadows. His hand hovered near his coat pocket, and I caught the glint of something metallic. A gun? I pressed myself against the wall, praying the darkness would hide me. After what felt like an eternity, he turned and walked back into the room. "It's nothing," he said. "But we should wrap this up." I exhaled slowly, retreating down the stairs as quietly as possible. Once I was back in my car, I sat gripping the steering wheel, my mind racing. The briefcase, the money, Rebecca's nervous tone, all of it pointed to something far more dangerous than I had imagined. I couldn't confront her yet. Not until I had more answers. The next morning, I reached out to Marcus. "I need your help again," I said, my voice tense. "Still following the trail?" Marcus asked, his tone cautious. "It's not what I thought," I admitted. "There's more going on. Something serious." Marcus listened as I described what I had seen and overheard at the industrial building. "Do you think she's in danger?" he asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But whatever she's involved in, it's not good." Marcus agreed to help me dig deeper, promising to look into the man Rebecca had met. That evening, Rebecca came home as if nothing had happened. She kissed me on the cheek, set her bag down, and started making dinner. "How was Samantha?" I asked casually, watching her closely. Rebecca hesitated for the briefest moment before smiling. "She's doing better." We talked for a while, and I think it helped. Her lie stung, but I didn't let it show. "That's good," I said, forcing a smile. But inside, my resolve hardened. The following day, Marcus called with an update. "I've got a name for the guy," he said. "His name's Lucas Grant. He's got a record, mostly financial crimes. Money laundering, embezzlement, that kind of thing." My stomach sank. "And now he's meeting with my wife." "It looks like it," Marcus said grimly. "Whatever they're doing, it's not legal." I clenched my fists. "Is there any chance she's being blackmailed?" "It's possible," Marcus said. "But without more information, it's hard to say." That night, I decided to search Rebecca's bag while she was in the shower. My hands shook as I opened it, digging through the neatly organized contents. At the bottom, I found the briefcase key. And then, tucked into a hidden side pocket, I found a burner phone. The screen was blank, locked with a passcode. I quickly returned everything to its place just as Rebecca turned off the shower. Later that night, while Rebecca slept, I sat in the living room staring at the burner phone. I'd managed to take it without her noticing, but now I wasn't sure what to do. I decided to take it to Marcus. "Can you crack it?" I asked when we met the next day. Marcus examined the phone, nodding slowly. "Give me some time." When Marcus called me a few hours later, his voice was tense. "Daniel, you're not going to like this," he said. "What did you find?" "The phone's messages are encrypted, but I managed to access a few of them. It looks like Rebecca's been coordinating something with Lucas for weeks. They've been moving large sums of money through different accounts." I gripped the phone tightly, my chest tightening. "She's laundering money?" "Looks like it," Marcus said. "But there's more. One of the messages mentioned you." I froze. "What does it say?" Marcus hesitated. "It said, he can't find out." If he does, everything falls apart. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Rebecca wasn't just keeping secrets. She was lying to me, hiding something that could destroy everything we'd built together. But the question remained, why? Marcus's discovery hit me like a brick wall. Rebecca wasn't just lying to me, she was actively involved in something dangerous. The messages on the burner phone painted a picture of a woman I barely recognized, and I wasn't sure what to do next. "Are you okay?" Marcus asked, his voice cutting through my thoughts. "I don't know," I admitted. "It's like I don't even know who she is anymore." Marcus hesitated. "If she's tied up in Lucas's schemes, she might be in over her head. Maybe she's being pressured. Or maybe she's not," I said bitterly. Marcus sighed. "You need more information before you make any decisions. I'll keep looking into Lucas. In the meantime, you should confront Rebecca, but carefully." That evening, I came home to find Rebecca sitting on the couch, her laptop open as she worked. She glanced up and smiled as I walked in, her expression as warm as ever. "Hey," she said. "How was your day?" "Busy," I replied, forcing a smile. "Yours?" She shrugged. "The usual. Just trying to catch up on work." Her words felt like a slap, knowing what I now knew. But I kept my composure, biding my time. Later that night, after Rebecca went to bed, I opened the browser on her laptop. My hands trembled as I searched through her history, desperate for any clues. At first, there was nothing unusual: work emails, social media, a few shopping sites. But then I saw a string of visits to an unfamiliar website, ClearPath Transfers. I clicked on the link, but it required a login. Frustrated, I jotted down the name and decided to show it to Marcus in the morning. The next day, Marcus called me with new information. "I found something on Lucas," he said. "He's connected to a shell company called ClearPath Holdings. They specialize in moving money off the books." "ClearPath Transfers," I said, the realization hitting me. "That's the site Rebecca's been visiting." "Then she's definitely involved," Marcus said grimly. "The question is, why?" That evening, I decided it was time to confront Rebecca. I couldn't let this go on any longer. When I got home, she was in the kitchen, humming softly as she chopped vegetables. "Rebecca," I said, my voice steady but firm. "We need to talk." She looked up, her smile faltering. "What's wrong?" I hesitated, then placed the burner phone on the counter. Her face went pale. "Where did you get that?" she asked, her voice trembling. "It doesn't matter," I said. "What matters is that I know about Lucas. I know about the money transfers. And I know you've been lying to me." Rebecca's hands shook as she set the knife down. "Daniel, I can explain." "Then explain," I said, my voice rising. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been laundering money behind my back." She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. "Why, Rebecca?" I demanded. "Why are you doing this?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I didn't have a choice." "What does that mean?" I asked, my frustration boiling over. Rebecca took a deep breath, her voice breaking as she spoke. "Lucas approached me 6 months ago," she said. "He had information, things about my work, things that could ruin me. He threatened to expose everything unless I helped him." "What kind of information?" I asked, my chest tightening. Rebecca hesitated, then whispered, "I made a mistake, Daniel. I shared confidential information from one of my clients. Lucas found out, and he used it to blackmail me." Her words hit like a punch to the gut. "So you've been working with him this whole time?" I asked, disbelief lacing my voice. "I didn't have a choice," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I thought if I did what he wanted, he'd leave us alone." But it just got worse. He kept asking for more. I leaned against the counter, trying to process everything. "Why didn't you come to me?" I asked, my voice cracking. "I was ashamed," she said. "And I didn't want to drag you into this mess. I thought I could fix it on my own." Her words hung in the air, heavy with regret. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to believe her, to forgive her. But another part couldn't ignore the betrayal, the lies, and the danger she'd brought into our lives. "We need to go to the police," I said finally. Rebecca's eyes widened in panic. "No, we can't. Lucas will retaliate. He's dangerous, Daniel. He has people who can hurt us." I clenched my fists, anger and frustration boiling over. "So what's the plan, Rebecca? Keep letting him control you? Let him destroy us piece by piece?" She looked down, her tears falling onto the counter. "I don't know," she whispered. That night, I called Marcus. "She admitted everything," I said. "Lucas is blackmailing her." Marcus sighed. "I figured it was something like that. But if she doesn't break free from him, this won't end." "What do we do?" I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. "We build a case," Marcus said. "We gather enough evidence to take Lucas down, and to protect Rebecca in the process." I nodded, my resolve hardening. This wasn't just about Rebecca anymore. It was about saving our marriage, and our lives. As the weight of the plan settled over us, Rebecca became more visibly distressed. She was reluctant to wear the wire for her meeting with Lucas, fearing retaliation if he discovered it. "What if he catches me?" she asked, her hands trembling as she gripped her coffee mug. "What if this backfires?" I placed a reassuring hand on hers. "We've thought this through. Marcus has backup. The police will be ready. We are not leaving you to face him alone." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll do it." But deep down, I could see the fear gnawing at her resolve. The next evening, Rebecca prepared for her meeting with Lucas. She tucked the recording device into her blouse, her hands shaking as Marcus adjusted it. "Just keep calm," Marcus said. "Stick to the script. Get him to talk, and we'll take it from there." Rebecca nodded, but her expression betrayed her nerves. At 7:45 p.m., she left for the storage facility, with me and Marcus following at a safe distance. My heart pounded as I watched her car disappear into the darkness ahead, every fiber of my being screaming that something could go wrong. When Rebecca arrived at the storage facility, Lucas was already waiting. He leaned casually against his car, his expression unreadable. "You're late," he said as she approached. "I got held up," Rebecca replied, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. Lucas gestured for her to follow him into one of the storage units. As she walked in, I parked my car down the road and waited with Marcus, listening intently through the live feed. "What do you have for me?" Lucas asked, his voice calm but sharp. Rebecca handed him a folder filled with fake documents Marcus had prepared. "This should cover what you need," she said, her tone careful. Lucas opened the folder, flipping through the papers. "This is good," he said, nodding. "But it's not enough." Rebecca hesitated. "What do you mean?" Lucas looked up, his expression hardening. "I need one more thing from you." Rebecca's voice trembled slightly. "What?" Lucas leaned in, his tone dropping. "Your husband works for Ridgemorn Holdings, doesn't he?" My blood ran cold as I listened. "Yes," Rebecca replied cautiously. "Why?" Lucas smirked. "They're holding a contract I need access to." "You're going to help me get it?" Rebecca stepped back, panic flashing across her face. "I can't do that." "You can," Lucas said firmly. "And you will. If you don't, I'll make sure everything we've done together lands squarely on you. Do you really think your husband will stick around when he finds out the whole truth? Rebecca's silence was deafening. Marcus glanced at me, his face pale. This is worse than we thought, he muttered. We need to stop this, I said, reaching for the door handle. Wait, Marcus said, grabbing my arm. If we blow it now, we lose the chance to catch him red-handed. Let her get through this. I clenched my fists, every instinct screaming to intervene, but I forced myself to wait. Inside the storage unit, Rebecca tried to compose herself. I'll figure something out, she said, her voice shaking. Lucas smirked, satisfied. Good. You have 1 week. Don't screw this up. With that, he handed her a small device. This will get you into their system. Use it, and bring me what I need. Rebecca stared at the device, her hands trembling as she nodded. When Lucas left, Rebecca collapsed against the wall, her breathing ragged. I rushed into the storage unit moments later, pulling her into my arms. He knows about you, she whispered, her tears soaking my shirt. He's trying to pull you into this now. I held her tightly, my own fear giving way to determination. This ends now, I said, my voice resolute. Marcus stepped into the room, his expression grim. We have enough to get the police involved, but this complicates things. If Lucas goes after Ridgemorn, it could blow up into something much bigger. I nodded, my jaw tightening. Then we don't wait for him to make the next move. We take him down now. The night after Lucas's threat, Rebecca barely slept. She tossed and turned, her guilt and fear palpable. I stayed up with her, holding her hand and trying to reassure her, but the stakes felt higher than ever. Lucas's demand for information from Ridgemorn Holdings had escalated the situation. This wasn't just about Rebecca anymore, it was about my career, my company, and the life we'd built together. The next morning, Marcus called with a plan. We can use the device Lucas gave Rebecca to set a trap, he said. If she pretends to follow through with his instructions, we can feed him fake data and catch him red-handed when he tries to use it. Rebecca's eyes widened. You want me to go back to him? It's the only way to draw him out, Marcus said. But this time, we'll have the police ready to move. Rebecca hesitated, her hands trembling. What if he finds out? What if he doesn't take the bait? Marcus placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We'll make sure he does. But you have to trust us. The plan was set in motion. Marcus worked with a cybersecurity expert to create fake files that looked convincing but contained embedded trackers. If Lucas accessed or attempted to use the data, it would immediately alert law enforcement to his location and activities. Rebecca was terrified, but she agreed to go through with the meeting. I've already let him ruin so much, she said, her voice shaky but determined. I need to fix this. I squeezed her hand, my chest tightening. We'll do this together. The meeting was scheduled for 2 days later at a private office Lucas occasionally used downtown. Rebecca would deliver the fake files on a USB drive, pretending to have retrieved the information from Ridgemorn. Marcus coordinated with the police to have plainclothes officers stationed nearby, ready to move in as soon as Lucas took the bait. On the day of the meeting, I drove Rebecca to the location. She was pale and silent, her hands clutching the USB drive tightly. When we arrived, she turned to me, her eyes filled with tears. Daniel, if this doesn't work. It will, I said firmly, cutting her off. We've covered every angle. Lucas won't get away with this. She nodded, her lips trembling as she stepped out of the car. Marcus and I monitored the meeting from a nearby surveillance van, listening in through the recording device Rebecca wore. Lucas's smooth, commanding voice filled the speakers. Do you have it? Rebecca placed the USB drive on the table. It's all there, she said, her voice steady despite the fear I knew she felt. Lucas plugged the drive into his laptop, scanning the files with a satisfied smirk. "This is perfect," he said. "You've done well. What happens now?" Rebecca asked, her tone cautious. Lucas leaned back, his smirk widening. "Now? I clean up loose ends." My heart stopped. Before Rebecca could react, Lucas pulled a small handgun from his coat pocket, aiming it at her. "You didn't think I'd let you walk away, did you?" he asked, his voice dripping with malice. "Move now." Marcus barked into the comms. The surveillance van doors flew open as officers stormed the building. Inside, Rebecca froze, her eyes wide with terror. Lucas glanced toward the door, distracted for a split second, and Rebecca seized the moment to dive under the table. The door burst open, and officers flooded the room, their weapons trained on Lucas. "Drop the gun," one of them shouted. Lucas hesitated, his eyes darting between the officers and Rebecca. Finally, he lowered the weapon and placed it on the table, his calm facade cracking. "You're making a big mistake," he snarled as the officers cuffed him. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." The fallout from Lucas's arrest was swift. The evidence we provided, combined with the tracking software embedded in the fake files, was enough to dismantle his entire operation. Rebecca cooperated fully with law enforcement, and her role as a coerced participant was taken into account. While the media coverage brought some unwanted attention, most of the blame landed squarely on Lucas. In the weeks that followed, Rebecca and I began to rebuild. "It feels like I can finally breathe again," she said one evening as we sat on the back porch, watching the sunset. I nodded, my hand resting on hers. "No more secrets. No more lies." She looked at me, her eyes filled with regret and hope. "I'll never keep anything from you again, Daniel. I promise." I squeezed her hand, my heart heavy but hopeful. "And I promise to always listen, no matter how hard it is." Our journey wasn't easy, and trust would take time to rebuild. But for the first time in months, I felt like we had a real chance to move forward, together.